أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الحمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين صاحب العصر والزمان خليفة الرحمن إمام الإنس والجان ولعن الله أعداهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد فقد قال الله وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Lessons from the life of Nabi Musa has been our ongoing topic. Tonight is lecture number 7. So previously on lessons from Nabi Musa, we left off last night by looking at now this moment of Nabi Musa's life where he enters Madian or Midian and he meets Nabi Shu'aib, Prophet Shu'aib. And he has the moment with his daughters and he ends up now in his house. Nabi Shu'aib has given him a home and assured him that you are safe here. You're away from those who are the zalimin, the unjust people, and you now are in a safe zone. And I left off the cliffhanger last night was that he offered Nabi Musa two things based on the recommendation of his daughter. The first thing he offered was that you come in, work for me. Okay, I'm old now, I need an extra body, I need definitely a male in the house. You come in and work for me. And I told you that I leave the second offer till tonight. What's that second offer? The second offer is that you marry one of my daughters. Yeah, shadi ho rahi hai. Yeah. Marry one of my daughters. And so he, this is of course after having a conversation, Nabi Shu'aib, with his daughter about the fact that he's a trustworthy person, he's faithful, etc., etc. And then he says, work for me. Stay here. Work for me for 8 years. If you can work for 10 years, it's good for you. And I won't burden you. I won't make the work overly difficult for you. Okay? Just stay here with me. You can help me, I can help you, and everything will be fine. And Nabi Musa agrees. He agrees to this agreement. Now he decides to work with him, and he says that, I will marry this daughter of yours. Now some reports say that it was the eldest daughter. Another report isn't clear about which daughter it was of the two. And the name that's given in at least 3 sources I saw just today was Safra, I believe. Let me just check that very quickly if you don't mind. I have my sources sitting around me just in case I get stuck somewhere. So give me a moment. I want to make sure I get that name right. Yes, I was right. Safra is the name of the daughter of Nabi Shu'aib. And they enter an agreement, and Nabi Musa now verbalizes the agreement, saying, look, I will stay here. I'll work with you. Okay, I'll do at least 8 years with you, right? We'll do the marriage contract. I'll marry your daughter. If I decide to leave after 8 years or stay the full 10, that's up to you. But basically, let's have the agreement that whatever I decide, will be accepted by both. And so it was agreed upon. Okay, and the next 10 years of Nabi Musa's life is spent beside Nabi Shu'aib in Madian, now married to his new bride. And the books say it is the best 10 years of his life. Okay, getting constant wisdom from Prophet Shu'aib, being relaxed, being surrounded by believers, not living a double life, like I said, and now, of course, being a married man. Okay? One point I want to make here, and since, these are lessons from the life, okay? It's not important that I get to the end of the story, and there's no way I'll get to the end of the story by the time I'm done with my 14 lectures with all of you. I won't be done by then. It's too long of a story. But it's important that we extract lessons. I talked about mahram and non-mahram yesterday. I talked about, how to be with a woman who's not your mahram. How to be with any woman. Always be respectful. But especially if it's someone else's woman, someone else's mother, someone else's daughter, someone else's wife, for example. As men, we have to be very, very careful how we look at them, how we address them, how we speak to them, how comfortable we are, how uncomfortable we make them, etc., etc. Here, I want to talk a little bit about spouse selection. Spouse selection. The one thing that the daughter agreed upon in terms of the marriage, and it is, for all purposes of this discussion, it's not mentioned in the books, but it is believed that the Prophet Shuaib was an open-minded father, for lack of a better term, in the sense that not only was he allowing his daughters to leave the house and go get some water from the sheep, for the sheep, which we saw from the story, but he was also accepting of their suggestions and the recommendations. It's the daughter that recommended Nabi Musa to him, and he said, okay, I agree. Meaning that he wasn't one of those old school fathers that just said, look, you don't know anything. So it is the belief that there was a discussion about whether or not the daughter was Ravi with marrying Musa or not. It's believed that the way that she had described him to her father, that in fact she was very much Radi. Not only was he a gentleman, of course, but he was a pious, God-fearing gentleman to her. All the qualities of a great spouse. And then on top of that, what is also believed and inferred from various sources, not me of course, various sources, is that because she had come back to tell Musa to come to her father's house, and she did it in a very what? Tamshi was the word used in the verse, you remember? In a very respectful and a very dignified way. That akhlaq that a woman now was displaying in front of Nabi Musa was very attractive to him. And so both of them now put piety and taqwa as number one on their list of spouse selection. And I just want to make sure that I make a point here. I know a lot of my youth are listening. A lot of these guys are listening who are married, maybe at an age of getting married. Please choose your spouse very, very carefully. Make sure the criteria is set by the deen. You and your parents don't need to come up with a whole list, green eyes and sayyid, or is gaon ki hai, or is zaban ki hai, or itni lambi hona chahiye. No, you don't need any of that. You don't need to do how tall she is, what the color of her eyes, is he fair or not, or no, please. The criteria is already set by the deen. Follow that criteria and you're bound to be successful. One of them is taqwa, piety. One hadith I want to share, and then we'll move on to the story. Because in this episode, he actually begins his journey back to Egypt. Oh no, yes he did. Back to Egypt, okay? Before that though, one hadith. Imam Jafri Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. He said, if you marry somebody based on beauty and fortune and money, and not based on taqwa and piety, meaning not based on the person's soul, you will lose the piety, you'll lose the beauty, you'll lose the fortune. Bound to happen. Bound to happen. When you marry for taqwa, taqwa will come into the marriage, fortune and success will come in the marriage, beauty will also come into the marriage. You know how many times I've seen individuals find their spouse attractive because their insides are beautiful. The Maulana, he's a beautiful man to me because of his insides. And because his insides are beautiful, he's attractive to me physically on the outside. Because she is an amazing, selfless person, I want to be with her, spiritually, physically, everything, right? At the same time, however, when you're ugly on the inside, you become very unattractive on the outside. It doesn't matter what the world says about you or what cover of magazine you belong on. To the person who means the most, you become ugly. Why? Because they see your true colors. They're your true colors. Okay? So please, my youth out there, choose your spouse properly. Stop and think, 20 years from now, this guy's going to be the father of my children. This woman's going to be the mother of my children 20 years from now. We're going to be moving towards Allah. Is it something I can see myself doing or not? Yes, he might have wavy hair now, but it'll fall out eventually. Okay? Let's move on now. 10 years, the Musa, prime of his life now, surrounded by this wealth of wisdom in Prophet Shuaib, surrounded by believers. 10 years, he serves, he's happy, he's married to a pious woman, serving the cause, very, very serene. After 10 years, he approaches Nabi Shuaib. Now some say late 30s, maybe 40 years old, and says, I need to go back to Egypt. My family is there. My followers are there. I need to go back to Egypt. Okay. At that moment now, some reports say that he had some children. Some reports don't say that. We can infer it from the various Arabic grammar used in the verses that they referred to later on the journey from Nabi Shuaib's house to Egypt. It uses the sighe jam, meaning 3 or more people were on this journey. We have no reason to believe anyone else accompanied them. It was probably him, meaning Nabi Musa, his wife Sufra, and then of course Safra, and then of course, the children. 1, 2, maybe for sure, some say that there was a son there involved. Because the sighe that was used, the pronoun that was used in the Arabic, denotes that there was 3 or more people and one of them had to have been male. But that's Arabic grammar, that's a little bit dry, so we'll leave that alone. But enough to know that he says, look, I have to go. Very thankful for everything that you've done. At that moment, Nabi Shuaib does 2 things. The first thing he does is that he reveals to Nabi Musa that you coming to me was a fulfillment of the promise of God. God had let me know that I'm going to send Musa to you to serve you and to help you and to assist you. And surely Allah is the one that fulfills the promises. And we'll get to those verses obviously at the end like we always do. So some of you asked a question to me personally. And by the way, I love the feedback. I'm getting great feedback from a lot of you. I love it. I didn't realize how much, people from Detroit, people from Orlando, there are people from today from New York who had reached out to me. So, thank you very much for the feedback. Your words are too kind for me. One person asked me, did Shuaib not recognize Musa? It's not apparent how much he knew of Musa. It's possible. What is told is that you will be sent somebody who will help you and who will make your life a little bit easier. But it is believed that this wasn't a surprise for Shuaib, that Musa had come and served him. The second thing that Nabi Shuaib did was, if you're going to go back to Egypt, he gave him a staff. The staff now enters the story. Oh yeah, the staff. This staff, it's believed, at least in Sheikh Rizwan Arastu's book, and I can show it to you, it's right here. God emissaries that I talked about in terms of a source. It's an excellent source. He's done a marvelous job. A lot of effort he put in. Not just the story of Nabi Musa, all the prophets from Adam all the way to Nabi Jesus, in a very, very nice, chronological story format that you can sit around with your family and read. In there, he talks about the fact the staff was the same staff given to Shuaib from those before him, all the way from Nabi Adam. It's a prophetic staff, and of course, it plays, as many of you know, a monumental role in Nabi Musa's journey. Has his wife, possibly his 2 kids, a staff now, and he makes his way back to Egypt after 10 years. And we all remember how he left Egypt, right? Not on the greatest of terms. Now, in those 10 years, I didn't find any reports to find out the state of his mother or his brother or Fir'aun, or did anyone, send out for him, reach him. We don't know. That's unknown to me, at least in the sources I looked at. Maybe in other sources it might be there. I'm not too sure. But at least the sources I looked at, it wasn't clear to me. So he begins on this journey. And this journey becomes so important to him. This is that journey, guys. Spoiler alert. This is that journey where now he becomes a prophet. So we're at episode 7 of season 1. And in episode 7 of season 1 of this Lessons of Nabi Musa, this is now where he becomes a prophet. Now, how does he become a prophet? Let's find out. They're walking towards Egypt. Cold nights in the desert, of course, the mountains, very rough terrain. And he gets lost. And one source that I saw, he says that he described the weather to be cold, to be rainy, to be wet, a very difficult situation. Instead of moving forward, Musa decides to just stop, rest for the night, kind of get settled in and hopefully in the morning we'll find our way back to Egypt. When he does that, in the distance now he's far, he has no idea where he is, right? In the distance he sees a brightness, okay? Now it's completely pitch black, right? In the mountains, in the desert, completely pitch black. You can see that kind of glow from a mile away. It seemed as if it was a glow from a fire. He sees fire. There's got to be people there. At least if not anything, there's a fire there, I can grab some fire and bring it back. Now how he decides that, it could be in a container, I'm not sure, but he's got to keep his family warm. Says to his wife, stay here, relax, I'm going to go and find out. Maybe there are some people there that can let us know the route back to Egypt. If not for anything else, I can bring you back the necessary tools to keep you warm. Okay, he ventures out. Moves closer to the fire. The side of the mountain, the Quran says, there was a fire there lit. Okay? And he approaches the fire very, very slowly. And from that fire now, a voice comes. A voice comes. Okay? And the voice says, and I'll paraphrase now, we'll go through verbatim the verses in a moment. Paraphrasing is that blessed is he who is in the fire, blessed is he who is outside the fire. Okay? Now imagine amongst that darkness from that burden, he's not that close to the fire, but he can hear voices enough for him to move closer, move closer. As now he moves closer and closer, slowly but surely to the fire, the voice becomes a booming voice. And now, addresses him directly. Ya Musa, innahu anallahu al-azizul hakim. Surely I am Allah, he says. I am Allah, the respectful one and the wise. And the first thing that this voice tells him to do, of course, now he catches Musa's attention, this voice. Now how he spoke, in which way he spoke, to be quite honest with all of you, the sources I have seen about this are unclear as to if it was a physical voice, if it was an actual voice. He's referred to as Kalim Allah, right? We say in Jatawat, Assalamu alaikum, ya waritha Musa Kalim Allah. Salams to Imam Hussein, who is the inheritor of Musa, who is known as Kalim Allah, the one who spoke to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now what that means, I can't explain that. Right? The various sources I have right now, literally around me right now, have not quite described to him. Was it Jibreel? Was it inspiration? Was it an actual voice? Was it something that could be heard with the physical ears? We don't know. Enough to know that there was communication. The first thing that the voice says after he says that I am Allah, he says, remove your shoes. Ajib. Remove your shoes. Take off your sandals. You are on the blessed valley of Tu'a. Okay? Again, we'll go through the verses in a moment. Blessed valley of Tu'a. Now, many have talked about these shoes. Many have talked about these shoes. Okay? Why? The very first thing he says to Musa. The first thing said to Musa, take off your shoes. What do these shoes represent? Very ajib, very beautiful discussion. Follow me, please, for a moment. One Sunni source, as reported in the book I just showed you, says that because he was wearing donkey-skinned sandals, okay? They may not be the best source, so to kind of remove that quote-unquote najasat, uncleanliness, he told to take off the shoes. So to them, it was a very apparent metaphor. The sandals are no good, take them off. But interesting, in Bahar, there is a hadith that is quoted by Imam al-Zamana himself, alayhi salatu wasalam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil farajahum, where he says, Imam Mahdi himself says, that the slippers or the sandals represented love that Musa had for the people around him, for his family, for his loved ones, maybe for things that were a little bit worldly, not in terms of the dunya, but maybe in, people around him. So this removing of the shoes was a metaphorical what? Cleansing of the hearts. If you're going to come to me, Musa, and speak to me, I want your hearts completely empty for me and for me alone. I don't want your hearts to be occupied with anybody else. This is me, this is you, on the side of a mountain. And it seemed as if the fire was getting more ferocious and more ferocious as the conversation now continues. So take off your shoes, he says. Okay? And Musa takes off his shoes. And that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, now some say he was 40 here, Nabi Musa. This is where Allah says, I have chosen you. You're my prophet. This is the moment now he becomes a prophet, guys. This is a moment now he becomes a prophet. In the middle of the desert, side of a mountain, no fanfare, no big announcement, no big reveal, no big contract signing, just him and his Lord. Same idea, the Prophet of Allah in a small lonely cave in the mountaintops of Mecca announcing his prophethood. There was no fanfare. Why? Because this is not a celebrity announcement. This is not an announcement of some couple coming together or some signing of some free agent in the sports world. No. This is a responsibility now being handed to an ulul azam prophet. Doesn't need anybody else. Even told to take off your shoes, meaning what? Leave the love of anyone else in your heart. Come to me, Musa, with a complete heart. I don't want a partial heart from you. I want you to understand what I'm saying to you. I have chosen you. You are my prophet now. And then he goes on to now give him this voice now, which of course he describes to be Allah. He says to pray, serve me, worship me. Do not appoint partners for me. Keep up your prayer to me. Even back then it was all about prayer, 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 prayer. And then he talks about, the unjust people and those who reject him. Okay? And after giving all of that, the voice then turns to Musa and says, what is it that is in your hand? What was it now? Staff. That staff that given to him by Nabi Shuaib, he has that staff. Of course, Musa is bewildered, no idea where he is, what's going on. The fire is talking to me. And again, let me say this one thing. We don't believe. Let me make this point very clear. I'm not sure how much time I have. Let me check my timer here on my right here. Okay, so I have about 10 minutes left here. I want to make sure that we understand something very clearly here about prophethood, okay? This is where we differ from any other sect in Islam. This is not like this was something that was new to Nabi Musa. He knew that something special for him was coming. Okay? Just like the Prophet of Allah in the cave of Hira, in the very first revelation from Jibreel of Iqra, Bismi Rabbika alladhi khalaq, the first 5 ayat of Surah Alaq. The Sunni brothers quote that to say that he was confused, bewildered. He was a little bit paranoid, afraid, shaking, not knowing what's happening, couldn't recognize Jibreel, thought that Jibreel was this evil jinn, right? And really made it sound like this was completely in shock, like he was just in shock of what was happening, hearing voices, comes down to from the cave of Hira, all bewildered, confused, goes to Khadija. Khadija says, don't worry, I'll take you to my uncle, and your uncle will tell you that you're the Prophet of God. That's the version that they have. We don't believe in that. We believe that yes, there was a physical reaction to the first wahi. That's only because of the sheer weight of the mission. Now look, you've been preparing for your MCAT, let's say, okay? There's a few of my MCAT guys out there who wrote it a couple of years back, right? I miss you, by the way, MCAT guys. You're writing, you're preparing, you know what's coming, October 5th. The night before, you can't sleep. The morning of, you can't eat breakfast. You're entering 1 hour left, half an hour left. You're sitting there at your desk, your stomach is going crazy, you're sweating, you're swallowing hard, you're all panicky. Are you surprised at the exam? No, you know what's coming. But it's the moment now. The moment has arrived now. All those years of preparation now, this is the moment. The butterflies of a game 7 in the playoffs for my sports guys out there, the butterflies, that nervousness, you can't sleep the night before. So yes, this reaction by Nabi Musa is absolutely justified. They say he's frightened. He doesn't know where he is for a moment. He forgets that he's holding a staff. It's almost as if Allah is now reminding him, what is that in your hand? He said, it's a staff. And the way that it's described is that he starts to talk, oh, I use it to like walk, I use it to guide my sheep, I use it to get fruits down off the leaves. He just starts talking, and God says to him, throw it down. Throw a staff down. He's, okay. At this moment now, you're not gonna argue with God. Throws the staff down, it becomes a serpent. Starts to wiggle. He freaks out, scared, begins to actually flee the scene. He's called back by God. Come back. Where are you going? Don't be afraid. Remember, I'm with you. I'm right beside you here. Pick it up. It becomes a staff again. So much training, all this. Now you have to understand that, look, why wasn't that reaction in the courtyard of Pharaoh? We'll get to that in a couple of nights, maybe a little bit later on down the road. Why didn't he freak out himself like everyone else did? Because Allah now had trained him for that very moment in this palace of Yazid, in the festival of Fir'aun. He says, throw it down, pick it up. He picks it up, and then he goes through a second sign with Nabi Musa. These are all now signs of prophethood. One is the staff. The second sign we'll leave for tomorrow, inshallah. Let's go through the verses now. Don't hate me. Come back tomorrow. Let's go through the verses now. Today we'll kind of go through that treasure hunt I talked about. We'll go through a few surahs. Stay with me. Have your Qurans ready. Give me your undivided attention. Hopefully you're all sitting there on the couch. You haven't fallen asleep yet, right? I have 5 minutes left, inshallah. Let's go through the verses. First set of verses, Surah Qasas. We've been at Surah Qasas for the past 4 or 5 nights. Verses 27, 28, 29. So Surah Qasas is the 28th chapter of the Quran, verses 27, 28, 29. Let's see what these verses are. Inshallah, you're there. 28, 27. 28th surah, 27th verse. We get it, Asabaya. Let's move on. Okay, thank you. The verse says that he said, who's here now? Who is here? Qala inni. Qala here is Nabi Shu'aib. Shu'aib says, I desire to marry one of these 2 daughters of mine to you, on condition that what? You should serve me for 8 years. But if you complete 10, it's good for you. But remember, I don't wish to be hard for you. If Allah pleases, you will find me one of the good ones. Okay? One of the good ones. We talked about that. Verse number 28 now. He says, who's he now? This is Musa now saying. Nabi Musa says, there shall be an agreement between me, between you, whichever of the 2 terms I fulfill, 8 or 10 years, there shall be no wrongdoing to me. Meaning what? That you're not going to be upset. Whatever I choose between 8 and 10, you'll accept. Allah is a witness of what we say. Very good. Verse number 29. This is now where he leaves Madian and goes towards Egypt now. 28 and 29. Okay? So when Musa had fulfilled the term, and they say that he spent 10 years there, and he journeyed with his family, right? With his family, he perceived on the side of the mountain a fire. Okay? So they don't talk about, the Quran doesn't talk about him being lost or him being out, cold or windy. That's all within the various sources of Bahar and various other sources that we have. But he sees this fire on the side of the mountain. He says to his family, wait here. I have seen a fire. Maybe I'll bring to you from it some news. Maybe there might be some people that are telling me that there's a path back to Egypt. Or at least some fire so that you may what? You may warm yourself. So meaning it's cold at night. Okay? Those are the 2 verses of Surah Qasas. Let's come to Surah Namal. Surah Namal is the 27th chapter of the Quran, 1 chapter before Qasas. Okay? Surah Namal is the 27th surah. Let's get there, please. 1 chapter before. Verses 7, 8, and 9. Okay? I mentioned in the beginning of my lecture that Musa's story is a treasure hunt. An egg here, a little surprise here, a little gold here. Okay? That's how we look it up in the Quran. It's not one area alone. So 27, 7. 27th chapter, 7th verse. Okay? And again, like I said, sometimes it's repeated across different areas in the Quran. This again is repeating what he says to his family. When Musa said to his family, surely I see fire. I will bring to you from it some news, or I'll bring to you there from a burning fire brand so you may warm yourself. Okay, fine. Now he begins to talk about, the Quran does, about this conversation, this voice. So when he came to it, a voice was uttered. Okay? a voice was uttered. Meaning now he sees the fire, he's walking towards it. It's not that close, but from that fire, now there's no one around, he hears a voice. Okay? Right? The voice says what? Blessed is whoever is in the fire, right? An burika man fin nar wa man hawlaha, or the one whoever is around the fire, right? Wa subhanallahi rabbil alameen. Glory be to Allah, the Lord of the worlds. Now he catches Musa's attention. Musa now gets closer and closer to the fire now. It gets brighter and brighter and bigger. And then all of a sudden, Ya Musa, verse number 9. 27:9. Ya Musa, innahu anallahu al-azizul hakim. O Musa, surely I am Allah, the mighty and the wise. Okay? The last set of verses we have is Surah Taha. Surah Taha, the 20th chapter of the Quran. Let's get there, please, very, very quickly. I have a couple of minutes left, inshallah. Okay, it's okay. I'll go, if it's okay with all you, 32 minutes today. Okay, let's go through this very quickly. Surah Taha is the 20th surah, verses 12 to 21. They're short verses, don't worry. Okay, again, we start off at verse number 11, actually. So when he came to it, a voice was uttered, O Musa. Again, repeating the story again. Verse number 12 says, surely I am your Lord, therefore put off your shoes. This is where he says, right? فَخْلَعْ نَعَلَيْكَ. Take off your shoes. Right? إِنَّكَ بِالْوَادِ الْمُقَدِّسِ طُوَى. This is Tuwa. This is the blessed valley of Tuwa. And then he says, I have chosen you. This is where he says, you're my prophet. I've chosen you. So listen to what is revealed. فَاسْتَمِعْ لِمَا يُوحَى. Listen, and this is where he gives his now opening now discussion with a newly appointed prophet Musa now. Surely I am Allah, there is no God but I, therefore serve me and keep up prayer from my remembrance. The verse right after, verse number 15, right? Surely the hour is coming. I am about to make it manifest so that every soul may be rewarded as it strives. I'm going to make it very clear to everybody that you're the prophet. Don't worry, it's coming now. It's coming soon. Okay? Therefore, let not him who believes not in it and follows his low desires turn you away from it. Don't be upset about those who don't follow what I say. Don't be worried. It's going to all be clear to you. It's going to be very clear to you very, very soon. Just hold tight. Stay the path. Stay the course. A lot of you out there, sometimes we look at those people who don't have God. Oh, their life looks so easy. Look, no hijab, no restrictions. They can eat here. They can listen to this. They can love this person. It looks so great. Don't be fooled by that. Don't let those people in their life affect the beauty of your faith inside of you. Okay, and then that's when in verse number 17, he says, وَمَا تِلْكَ بِيَمِينِكَ يَا Musa. What is in your right hand? What is this in your right hand? Verse number 18, he says, this is what? This is my staff. I recline on it. I beat the leaves with it to make them fall upon my sheep. I have other uses for it. He just begins to kind of talk about the staff. And then Allah says in verse number 19, قَالَ أَلْقِهَا يَا Musa. Throw it down. Throw the staff down. He threw it down. فَأَلْقَهَا. Verse number 20 now. We're going into session now. فَأَلْقَهَا فَإِذَا هِيَ حَيَّةٌ تَسْعَى. He cast it down. It became a serpent. Serpent running here, running there, running there. He now flees. He flees, which is not captured here. He flees Musa. At that moment now, Allah says, come back. قَالَ خُذَهَا وَلَا تَخَفْ. Grab it and don't be afraid. Don't be afraid, okay? Once you grab it, what will happen? We'll restore it back to its former state. Once again, it'll become a staff in your hand. He was just showing you, have trust in me. You have that power inside of you, and don't be afraid. The rest of it, inshallah, what happens? The second moment, this talk isn't done yet now. Him and God are just starting. We'll continue that tomorrow, inshallah. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to accept our qaleel efforts to understand your words, to read your words, and then to apply your words, inshallah. Accept our amal, Allah. Forgive our sins. right? Find barakat and blessings inside the homes of these beautiful families right now who are listening to me and this story, inshallah, and allow them to stand beside the Imam when they come. Thank you very much. We will see you tomorrow night. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.